What Albert Einstein, the nuclear energy and cognitive biases have to do with conversion rate optimization and machine learning. I'm Valentin Radu, CEO at Omniconvert. I will connect the dots between all of this by using the insights we gathered after analyzing 41,000 A/B testing experiments. Let's begin! Cognitive biases and machine learning. This is part of the A/B testing summit, so welcome to my session. But before we starting, let me play some framing on you. No stupid people beyond this point. Have you noticed something? Have you consciously decided to pay more attention to this session? If the answer is yes, this is because of the framing effect. But let's go further. Let me start with a short story. Back in 1997, I wanted to go to the seaside with my new girlfriend. And I haven't got enough money, so I got a temporary job selling cookbooks on the street. Actually, this guy is pretty famous, or it was pretty famous like 22 years ago back in Bucharest. So in the first day, my sales were zero. So only 23 users, because I've asked only 23 people on the street, and the conversion rate, of course, was 0%. Actually, this was my first A/B testing experiment, and I had no clue about where the life will lead me. After the first week, I've noticed that I managed to sell only 2 cookbooks, even though I've asked a lot of people, so 218 people, and the conversion rate was actually pretty good, 0.9%. But I've decided to adjust the things that I was doing. So I've decided to change some aspects. And the things that I've changed was, of course, the traffic. So from 30 people a day to 100 people a day. The location, from everywhere on the street to the bus stations, because they couldn't say they are in a hurry anymore to me. And of course, I've changed the target as well. From everyone to old ladies or mothers with kids, because they couldn't run anywhere from me. So the last thing that I've changed was the pitch from, hey there, do you want a cookbook, to what if you could surprise your nephews? So these things were actually leading to a jackpot. So I've managed to sell 28 books, even though my target was 20. I've asked 2,147 people, and my conversion rate was 1.3% eventually. That's pretty something, because that's how Costinești, the seaside where we've got back in 1997, looked like. Mission accomplished. But of course I couldn't post the picture with my ex because we broke up 3 years ago, and the GDPR showed up in 2018. So my insights after this first experiment. First of all, A/B testing really pays off if you don't give up. So you need a lot of persistence. The second is that persistence itself can be a trap if you insist in the wrong direction. So this is happening to all of us. We are hearing all these stories about, hey, let's be persistent, let's not give up. But why shouldn't we give up if we are pointing in the right direction? So if there's no door out there, why should we persist in going through the wall, right? The third thing was that relevant targeting saves the day. So if I wouldn't be able to adjust and to notice who's my ideal customer profile, I wouldn't be able to sell all these cookbooks, and maybe I wouldn't be here talking with you. The fourth thing was that framing itself is incredibly powerful. I'm a strongly believer that framing and how you frame things can really transform your outcome and your destiny eventually. But let's take a look at framing effect. These two guys, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, maybe you remember them, these are one of the first behavioral psychologists, and they were stating that humans are born irrational and that has made us better decision makers. But let's take a look at one of their first experiments. The setup was like this. So they've asked a lot of students from the Stanford and Columbia University about a hypothetical disease. So the thing was like this. 600 people are infected with a deadly disease, and we have two kinds of treatments. Treatment A will lead to 400 deaths, treatment B to 200 deaths. Each treatment was presented in a positive frame and in a negative frame as well. For example, for treatment A, the positive frame was save 200 lives. The negative frame was 400 people will die. But what happened after this? So the results were incredible. So 72% was the conversion when the frame was positive, save 200 lives. And only 22% of the students selected treatment A when the conversion frame was negative, 400 people will die. Even though the real informations were the same. So the framing effect means that people tend to draw different conclusions from the same information depending on how that information is being presented to them. And let me take a look at ING. So ING is one of the the most important banks in Europe. And let me show you how this experiment changed completely the outcome based on changing the frame. So after the research insights made with Omniconvert with on-site surveys, they've realized that most of their visitors haven't converted because they were afraid that they won't qualify for getting a loan. Based on these insights, we've made a hypothesis together with them. If we will change the lead form by gradually addressing the visitor's objections after each field during the form completion, more of the visitors will eventually finish the process. So what happened? We've orchestrated an experiment on the form field, responding and being interactive after each field. So we've managed to treat the objections that they might have after the completion of any field. So when they've said their surname, we responded hello. After the name, we've addressed a different objection. After the phone, we've stated that you don't need other documents, you don't have any hidden costs, and eventually that led to full orchestrated lead form, which was actually interactive. So we've addressed also the instant gratification after every field, because you've got all these green text and the checkboxes. And also we have managed to improve the conversion rate by 12%. But if we not look only at the results, if we are looking at the cognitive biases that they've addressed the Zeigarnik effect, the framing effect, and the bandwagon effect. More about these cognitive biases a bit later. So framing is the foundation of A/B testing. What we are actually doing is changing the website content in order to determine changes in the behavior of the users. So we have the same products and the same offer, but this leads to different results. Of course, there are A/B tests which allow the product managers to change some features or to validate that some other type of experiences are addressing and are changing the behavior of the visitors. But mainly what we need to do on A/B testing as marketeers and as data-driven experts, we don't need to push the price or to address visitors with different offers. What we need to do is to keep the margin of the websites and the customers profitable by changing the experience on the website so that they are increasing their conversion rates. And let me state something which is pretty important. Overconfidence effect is another cognitive bias. We as experts tend to be wrong 40% of the time when we think at answers for various questions. And we are not alone here, so we are in a good company. For instance, Thomas Watson, which is the chairman of IBM, stated back in 1943 that I think there is a world market for maybe 5 computers. Do you know how many computers are now? Mr. Watson, you can't hear us. But that's not the single example. Albert Einstein stated that there is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. And that was from a man which was an expert, not in the nuclear energy field, but in his field. So the authority bias means that people have this tendency to attribute greater accuracy to the opinion of an authority, even though which is not related to the content, and be more influenced by that opinion. So do you remember all these superstars which influence us in what kind of drinks to drink, what kind of cars to buy, even though they are not using those cars, right? So people are biased. There are 103 cognitive biases. And in the last 6 years, we at Omniconvert, we have learned a lot about conversion rate optimization. So we have been working with a lot of customers of different sizes. 18,261 active websites use the Omniconvert to do manual driven A/B testing, and we have been focusing on more than 41,000 human driven A/B tests to understand which are the winners and which are the losers, and why some experiments are winning and some of them not. So we have analyzed the companies with the best results. So as you can see here an example, this customer made 176 different experiments, and in the last 3 months alone their uplift was fantastic. So mainly they've managed to bring 46% more conversions and 66% more weighted revenue. So that's something, right? But is there a pattern here? Are there any anomalies in the data? So we wondered like you, and we realized that if we split the experiments into two various types of experiments in overlays, which are mainly interactive content, and A/B tests, which means changing only the content of the existing website, we can see that as the uplift is higher, the chance to win is lower. So mainly only around 30% of the experiments were winning out of 100 experiments, right? But if we look based on the statistical significance, the situation is completely different. So the overlays are actually bringing more uplift if we break down based on the statistical significance. And we wondered why, because the A/B testing is pretty important, but having 3 times less uplifts after 15% uplifts, that's something, right? So mainly what we understood is that the overlays are pretty impactful, and this is mainly on e-commerce websites. So our insights after this research, first was that A/B testing, it's a numbers game. The more experiments, the better. The second is that velocity is vital. So testing means discipline. The third insight is that the winners are ultra marathoners. So you need long-term commitment in order to succeed in A/B testing. The fourth one was that overlays can be more effective than A/B tests for e-commerce websites. And the fifth one was that not all cognitive biases are created equal, because we've analyzed which are the most impactful cognitive biases that are useful into conversion rate optimization. And these are the availability cascade, the bandwagon effect, the confirmation bias, the fear of missing out, of course, the herd mentality, and that's why you need testimonials and reviews, because people are trusting more other people, other neutral people, than they are trusting us as marketeers or the voice of our product or our company. And anchoring is the sixth type of cognitive biases, which is impactful. The next 6 are framing, and you've understood what framing is. The next one would be Zeigarnik effect, which means that people remember better things that they haven't finished. And that's why we are being addressed by Netflix by those unfinished loops, right? So we haven't finished that episode, and we go back and to see what happens with our favorite character, right? The next one would be authority bias, the loss aversion, which means it's for the brains of us as human beings, is more impactful for us, and we tend to act more against losing something, then we act towards winning something. So the next one would be the reciprocity bias, and that's why if you do any kind of CSR and if you donate to charities or if you do any kind of program that demonstrates that you are doing good, that might affect positively your conversion rate. And last but not the least is the hyperbolic discounting bias. That means people tend to have a stronger preference towards immediate payoffs than to later payoffs, and that's why instant gratification works very good. So based on all this research that we have done, we've understood that there are three types of existing technologies. Is the A/B testing technology, is the multivariate testing technology, and is the automated technology that we are deploying. So the steps of orchestrating an experiment are pretty much the same on all of them. So you need to collect the data, you need to generate data-driven insights, you need to do hypotheses and to prioritize those hypotheses. You need to do segmentation, to set the audience and the pages, to decide which variables to test. You need the creatives, then you do the front end and the QA, you launch the experiment, and of course you do the adjustment. But as we can see here, some parts of the whole optimization process could be automated and could be made even better than we as human beings are doing. So the data collection is being made automatically, right? Then the insights generation for MVT, it can be partially automated, but with a fully automated machine learning technology that we're going to speak about a bit later, you can completely automate. Then you do the hypothesis and prioritization, you do the segmentation, which can be as well automated. So mainly we are going towards an era where segmentation and the decision making towards whom to target, and with which kind of experiment, it's gonna be completely automated. So you have a lot of data points. So what if you could have a technology and an algorithm that mix all these data points like geolocation, technology, device types, real-time behavior, how many degrees are outside, if the customer has already bought in the last 3 months, what's the lifetime value, or any kind of CRM data, and mix this with traffic source as well. So this is not a task that a human being could perform, right? So this is a specific work for a human brain. But with machine learning optimization, we can be able to deploy around 500 experiments in around 4 hours against making an experiment to last almost 3 weeks. That's of course depending on the business cycle. But most of the experiments on, let's say, a normal, not a very high traffic website, it's taking around 3 weeks. So mainly the difference is that you can be able to mix the data points with the cognitive biases of the human brains, and you can mix this with 6 different types of machine learning experiments in order to deploy thousands of variations. So what kind of experiments can you do? One type of experiment is the choice reduction. So on an e-commerce, if you don't reduce the choices and if you don't, let's say, persuade your visitors towards getting further down the funnel by filtering based on the size, based on the price, color, availability, etc., you'll not be able to have a buyer, right? So you'll not be able to have a conversion. So after an initial integration, we can have systems that will automatically detect, learn, and adapt by prompting the disengaged visitors to use the most relevant filters and push them down the funnel. So these kind of experiments are using actually the selective perception, which is a cognitive bias, the tendency for expectations. Yeah, let's say if you are being prompted by the system, hey, what's your size? And you select, I don't know, I'm wearing L, then your subconscious will say to you, this is the right thing for me. So mainly this make our visitors unconsciously believe that this reduced choice alternative is for them. So mainly this is working very good for fashion, books, travel, furniture, sport apparel, etc. Another kind of experiment that could be automated is the special offer experiment. So let's realize something. Marketeers which are prompting their visitors with 10% or 5% or 18% discount to incentivize their visitors are always losing money because of three facts. First is that they might offer a too high discount to customers that would have bought for less. They are not offering a discount, they are not offering the discount that would have made some disengaged visitors to actually buy, and they are offering a discount to a visitors that would have bought in full price. So mainly they are either giving a too big discount, too high discount, they are not giving the discount to those who would have bought, and they are offering a discount to someone which would have bought in full price. So eventually this is diminishing the margin that a retailer has. So machine learning will solve these three problems by constantly adapting and pushing the special offer experiments only to the disengaged visitors. So mainly, instead of pushing 10% to everyone, maybe you could push 5% to a visitor which is the third time and whatever, because we don't know. That's for the machines to algorithmically learn. And in this manner, you are keeping the most of the margin possible to you as a retailer. So this is using three different cognitive biases. First is the hyperbolic discounting, because you get the discount right now. The second is the loss aversion, because instead you can state that you'll save 10% or save 8% or whatever, and the availability cascade. So that's a self-reinforcing process in which people believe that if you repeat it long enough, this will become true. So mainly if you push this at the third visit, at the sixth visit, and you push some reminders, you could be able to convince more visitors to buy. Another type of experiment that will be automated is that social proof experiment. So Booking.com is using this a lot in order to push the fear of missing out on us. So mainly we are being affected by our own herd mentality and the bandwagon effect when we are seeing that 6 people are looking at this right now, 60 people already booked at this hotel and stuff like that. So mainly the social proof will be able to push this kind of nudges and notifications like other 42 visitors are interested in this specific product. So the cognitive biases which are addressing this type of experiment is the herd mentality bias that refers to the people's tendency to follow and copy what most of them are doing. The fear of missing out, which is the perception that you are missing on something which is already doing. So this is some sort of a social anxiety by a desire to stay continually connected. And the bandwagon effect is the human understanding that it has once adopted an opinion, either as being positive or negative. All these will be supported towards deciding this. So if for the visitors which are on the edge, but they aren't convinced they just need a small drop in order to be convinced, these type of experiments will be impactful. We have seen this working already on the manual mode, and what if we could automate them? But why should we automate things? If we look at we human beings and how we are doing tasks, let's imagine this task, right? The task is going to sleep. The human way is pretty simple. At 10 p.m. you have the decision that you want to go to sleep. Then you forgot to drink water and you say, you know what? I must be hydrated and I must go to drink some water. But on the way back, you realize, have I set the alarm on my phone? Let's check it out again. And then during this checking, you realize you have a new notification from Facebook or Slack or whatever. After 30-something minutes of scrolling down and up and remembering about some emails, you realize that you need to sleep. And you go back and forth, and I don't know, 2-3 hours later, you actually go to sleep. You know this type of behavior, right? I'm not alone here, I hope. But let's see how the machines are doing the same task. So if the instruction is go to sleep at 10 p.m., at 10 p.m. the system shuts down. Pretty simple, right? So for this kind of stuff where the objective is clear, let's say more revenue per visitor, and if the attributes and the events and the variables are being connected into a neural network, then the system will be much more persuasive. So fact is that humans are distracted, and let's use the machines for what they can learn and do much better, for those limited things that they are doing better than us, for the creativity, for addressing and changing the overall strategy. We are not in the AI era yet, but for those that could be, let's say, addressed by machine learning, why don't we do it? So artificial intelligence and deep learning and machine learning, according to Mark Cuban, whatever you are doing, if you don't understand it, you need to learn it, because otherwise you're going to be a dinosaur within 3 years. So if you are interested, we are in the beta version with the Omniconvert automated. So that means conversion rate optimization for your e-commerce on autopilot. That's what we aim for. We are not ready yet. We don't think that this is going to be extraordinary in the very beginning, but we do believe that the early enthusiasts and the early adopters will be rewarded very, very good by trying out this type of methods, at least for e-commerce websites. So that was my presentation for today. Thanks a lot for having me. If you want to get in touch with me, that's my LinkedIn account and that's my email address. Thanks a lot, A/B Testing Summit attendees, for watching this, and keep up the good work.